You control nothing but your mind. What if I told you that most of your suffering doesn't come from what's happening out there, but from what you're trying to control in here? Think about it. We spend so much of our lives exhausted, anxious, angry, not because life is cruel, but because we're gripping tightly to things we were never meant to hold. We try to control how people see us. We try to control the future, as if worry could predict it. We even try to rewrite the past in our minds, replaying what we should have said, what we could have done, as if that could bring us peace. But all it brings is more suffering. So let me ask you this. What would it feel like to finally let go, to stop trying to control the uncontrollable, and instead focus on the one thing that was always yours? You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. This is where your real freedom begins, not in dominating life, not in winning every battle, but in returning again and again to the only power you've ever had, the power to choose your mindset, your responses, and your way of seeing the world. Why do we suffer so deeply? Because we keep trying to control what isn't ours. We want others to validate us. We want the world to be fair on our terms. We want things to unfold the way we imagine, and when they don't, we call it failure, rejection, injustice. But what if it's just life being life? Stoicism teaches us something radical yet simple. Freedom is not found in fixing everything around you. It's found in mastering your own mind. You don't control the economy. You don't control your partner's emotions. You don't control what happened yesterday, but you do control how you respond today. You control your focus, your words, your values, your breath. And over time, that's not a small thing. That's everything. Let's get honest. How much energy do you spend trying to manage other people's opinions? Trying to force outcomes? Trying to protect yourself from every possible uncertainty? That's a full-time job with zero payoff. It only drains you, distracts you, and disconnects you from your center. But the moment you stop chasing control, you create space for peace. You create room to grow. You remember you are not here to control the storm. You are here to remain calm within it. This video isn't about ignoring real problems. It's about putting your power where it matters most. It's about returning to a simple, powerful truth. You control nothing but your mind, and that is enough. So stay with me. In the next few parts of this journey, we'll go deeper into this principle, what the Stoics really meant by control, how to train your mind in the face of chaos, and how releasing control doesn't make you weaker, it makes you truly strong. Because when you stop trying to control everything, you don't lose power, you finally claim it. Let's begin the journey back to your inner calm. If you're ready, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. You control very little. Let me ask you something quietly, but truthfully. How much of your life do you think you truly control? Really think about it. We plan, we hope, we try to shape every detail. But then something happens, a delay, a rejection, a betrayal, or a storm we didn't see coming, and suddenly we feel powerless. The Stoics didn't sugarcoat this. In fact, one of the most liberating truths they taught is this: you control almost nothing in life except your own mind. Epictetus said it plainly. Some things are up to us and some are not. It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary once you really sit with it. You don't control the weather. You don't control traffic, the economy, or the moods of other people. You don't control illness, aging, or the past. You don't control whether someone loves you or leaves you. You don't even control what someone says about you behind your back. That can be a painful realization until you see the other side of the coin. Because while you can't control most of what happens, you can control your attitude, your reactions, your focus, your choices, and the meaning you give to everything around you. And that's no small power. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone insults you. Maybe they question your intelligence or mock your efforts. In that moment, what's your instinct? Defend yourself? Lash back? Go quiet but fume on the inside? You can't control what they said. That's already out there. But you do have control over what happens next. Whether you believe them, whether you internalize it, whether you allow it to ruin your day, or to simply pass through you like wind. That moment between what happens and how you respond is where your power lives. The Stoics called this the inner citadel. It's the place inside you that no one else can touch unless you let them. It's not denial. It's not apathy. It's clarity. Because here's the truth most people miss. The more you try to control the uncontrollable, the more anxious and frustrated you become. But the more you learn to focus on your inner domain, your thoughts, your actions, your integrity, the more peace you create, even in chaos. It's a hard shift, especially in a world that teaches us to obsess over everything. Likes, opinions, outcomes. Control becomes a drug we chase and suffer for. But letting go of false control doesn't mean weakness. It means you're finally choosing to invest your energy where it counts. Let me ask you this. Where in your life right now are you pouring energy into something you can't control? Maybe it's a person you wish would change, a future you're trying to predict, a mistake from the past you can't seem to forgive. Now ask, what would happen if you released your grip just a little? What would open up if you brought that energy back to yourself? The answer isn't always easy, but it is always freeing. So the next time something feels out of your hands, remember what is still in them. Your mindset, your breath, your ability to choose your next step, however small, however quiet. And over time, that becomes a superpower. Because when the storms come, and they always do, you won't waste your energy yelling at the wind. You'll simply adjust your sail. Reaction versus conscious response. The moment that changes everything. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and regretted it the second it left your lips? Maybe it was a harsh word you didn't mean, or a snap decision driven by fear, not clarity. We've all been there. That sudden reaction, fast, raw, emotional. It feels like it just happens before we even know what we're doing. And here's the truth. That's not your fault. It's your brain doing exactly what it was wired to do. You see, deep in the brain lies the amygdala, the part responsible for detecting threats and triggering our survival response. When something feels dangerous, offensive, or emotionally charged, the amygdala takes over. It flips the switch to fight, flight, or freeze. It's automatic, it's fast, and it's powerful. But here's the good news. Just because it's automatic doesn't mean it's final, because we also have something extraordinary, the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is like the wise elder of the mind. It governs judgment, self-control, reflection. It steps in, not to shut down emotion, but to give us choice, the space between the stimulus and our response. And that space, that's where everything changes. That space is where you live, not as a bundle of instincts, but as a conscious human being, a thinker, a creator, a responder. The Stoics understood this long before modern neuroscience gave it names. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But what he was really pointing to is the idea that we don't have to react at all. We can respond. So what's the difference? A reaction is fast, it's loud, it's driven by emotion. It's what happens when the world pushes your buttons, and you push right back without thinking. A response, on the other hand, is quiet, intentional, grounded. It's born not from panic, but from presence. Think about it. A reaction says, "You hurt me, so I'll hurt you." A response says, "I see what's happening. Let me decide who I want to be in this moment." And the difference? It's just a pause. One breath. That's all. You don't need an hour of meditation. You don't need to go live in the mountains. You just need one breath between trigger and action. Because in that breath, your mind returns. Your wisdom returns. Your power returns. Neuroscientists now call this reframing or top-down regulation, when we use the prefrontal cortex to override the amygdala's hijack. But the Stoics called it something simpler, self-mastery. So let me ask you this. When someone criticizes you, do you immediately defend an attack? Or can you pause just long enough to ask, what am I really defending here? When life throws a problem your way, do you spiral into stress and frustration? Or can you step back and ask, what part of this is under my control? Every day gives you 100 chances to practice. And no, it's not always easy. But here's the beauty. Every pause is progress. Every moment you choose response over reaction, you're literally rewiring your brain, one breath at a time. Over the weeks, the pause gets longer. The emotions feel less overpowering. The mind feels more spacious. You begin to feel like the master of your own life, not a puppet of your own impulses. It's not about perfection, it's about practice. Let this be your simple Stoic mantra today. One breath, one pause, one better choice, because over time you don't just react less. You live better, more grounded, more aware, more free. Letting go of control, real freedom. Let me ask you something quietly, gently. How much of your life do you spend trying to control things? Maybe it's the outcome of a project. Maybe it's how people perceive you. Or maybe it's the need to plan every moment so nothing feels uncertain or out of place. We all crave control, not because we're power hungry, but because control gives us the illusion of safety. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control, the more control you actually lose. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. You overthink. You obsess. You lose sleep trying to fix the future before it even arrives. And slowly you begin to drown in anxiety, not because something bad has happened, but because your mind is living in the fear of what might happen. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And he was right. Most of the stress we carry isn't born from the present moment. It comes from our desperate attempts to predict, prepare, and perfect things we were never meant to control. Take the perfectionist, for example. They can't sleep at night because the report they submitted wasn't flawless. They replay conversations over and over, wondering if they said the wrong thing. They chase a version of life that's always just out of reach because it's based on an impossible standard. Now compare that to someone who lives with a Stoic mindset. They don't ignore reality. They care deeply, but they've made peace with what they can't control. Instead of chasing the perfect outcome, they focus on showing up with clarity and intention. Instead of clinging to what should happen, they accept what is happening and ask, what's the best response I can offer now? That shift, however subtle, is powerful, because when you stop trying to control everything out there, You reclaim power where it truly belongs, within yourself. You begin to let go of needing others to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. You let go of needing your plans to unfold perfectly in order to feel peace. And in that letting go, you don't lose control. You gain freedom. Freedom from the mental prison of overthinking. Freedom from the exhaustion of pretending to be in charge of things no human can fully control, like time, people, outcomes, even your own emotions. Now, I'm not saying you stop caring. I'm saying you shift your energy from controlling to contributing, from forcing to flowing, from obsessing to observing. You do your best and then you release. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. A wise person still acts, still prepares, still shows up fully, but they do so with the understanding that what happens next is not up to them. Let me give you a simple reminder. You don't control the weather, but you can choose your clothing. You don't control how people feel about you, but you can choose how you treat them. You don't control how your story unfolds, but you do control the attitude with which you turn each page. So next time your mind begins to spiral, trying to fix, force, or fear the future, pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, I am not here to control the world. I am here to meet it with strength and calm. Over time, this shift becomes a quiet superpower. You become lighter, clearer, more open to life, not because it's easy, but because you're no longer trying to fight everything all the time. You begin to trust the process, trust yourself, and trust that even in uncertainty, you're enough. And that, my friend, that's where true freedom begins. Daily practices to train the mind. They're the Stoic way. Let's slow down for a moment before the day pulls you in a dozen directions, before the world demands your attention, your energy, your reactions. Let's start with just one quiet question. What is in my control today? It sounds simple, but this one question, asked every morning, can change the way you move through life. Because most of the stress we carry isn't from what happens to us. It's from trying to control things that were never ours to carry. So here's a new way to begin your day. Not by reaching for your phone, not by checking the news, but by training your mind like a Stoic would. Start with your journal. No fancy format needed. Just a quiet space to ask, what's in my control today? How do I want to show up, no matter what happens around me? What kind of person do I want to be, especially when things don't go my way? This is your mental rehearsal. You're not predicting disaster. You're preparing for life. You're not chasing peace. You're creating it within. Marcus Aurelius did this every morning. In his private journal, what we now call meditations, he wrote to himself, "Today you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, but you are not to be harmed by them." He wasn't complaining. He was preparing, grounding himself in calm before chaos could reach him. Because when the storm comes, and it always does, your mind needs something to return to. A practice, a choice, a space of stillness inside. So what happens when life does throw you off course? Maybe you lose your job. Maybe someone betrays your trust. Maybe a dream you worked so hard for falls apart. It's in those moments that your mental training reveals itself. Most people react. They panic. They lash out. They shut down. Their peace is shattered because they've tied it to things they can't control. But the Stoic doesn't collapse. They pause. They ask, is this in my control? And if the answer is no, they let go of the outcome and return to what is theirs, their attitude, their effort, their next step. It's not emotionless. It's emotionally intelligent. It's self-command. It's maturity. Imagine two people facing the same storm. One is calm, not because they're lucky, but because they've practiced stillness every single day. The other is consumed, not by the event itself, but by their unchecked reaction to it. Which one would you rather be? You don't need to become emotionless to become mentally strong. You just need to become aware. You need space between impulse and action. That's why these daily practices matter. Because mental strength isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the quiet ones. The mornings when you check in with yourself. The pauses before you send that angry reply. The breaths you take instead of reacting in fear. So tomorrow morning, try this. Don't just go through your routine. Rehearse your response. When criticism comes, how will you respond? When delays happen, how will you carry yourself? When life doesn't bend to your plans, how will you keep your center? Because over time, this kind of practice doesn't just help you survive, it transforms how you live. You become the person who brings calm into chaos, not by force, but by presence, by training, by choosing every day to return to what matters. Let this be your daily commitment. Ask, pause, choose, repeat. That's how Stoics train their minds. That's how you build unshakable peace. One morning, one thought, one choice at a time. The story of emotional mastery, James Stockdale's Stoic strength. Let me tell you a story, not just of survival, but of unshakable inner power. It's the story of Admiral James Stockdale. You may not hear his name in everyday conversations, but if you want to understand what emotional mastery truly looks like, his life is one of the clearest mirrors we have. In 1965, Stockdale's fighter jet was shot down over Vietnam. He was captured, beaten, and held as a prisoner of war for nearly 8 years. 8 years of uncertainty, torture, isolation, cut off from everything familiar. Most people would have broken, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and many did. But Stockdale didn't. Not because he had superhuman toughness, but because he had something far more sustainable, a Stoic mindset. You see, before his capture, Stockdale had studied the teachings of Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher who taught that while we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond within us. That became his lifeline. In a world where every freedom was stripped from him, where even the next day wasn't guaranteed, Stockdale clung to one truth. He still had the power to choose his attitude. He couldn't control the guards. He couldn't control whether or not he would survive. But he could control how he carried himself. He could control his dignity, his courage, his hope, and perhaps the most remarkable thing he said, even after years of pain, was this: I never lost faith in the end of the story. That line is worth pausing on, because he didn't mean blind optimism. He didn't deny how brutal the reality was. He fully faced it, never sugar-coated it. But he also held on to a quiet conviction that the meaning of the story wasn't finished yet, that one day this pain would be part of something greater, that how he endured it would matter, not just for himself, but for others. This is emotional mastery, not pretending things are okay when they're not suppressing emotions or faking positivity, but holding two truths at once. This is hard, maybe the hardest thing I've ever faced. And also, but I still get to decide how I will face it. That's what separates the Stoic from the broken. You might not be in a prison camp, but maybe you've been through a season that felt like one. Maybe you felt trapped, in grief, in failure, in uncertainty. Maybe you've been betrayed, abandoned, knocked to your knees by life. And maybe, just maybe, This story finds you in a moment when you're trying to remember your own strength. So let me gently remind you, you don't need to control what's happening to find peace. You need to reclaim what was always yours, your mindset, your spirit, your response. Because if a man in a dark, windowless cell could hold on to hope, if he could endure suffering without letting it make him bitter, then what's possible for you right now, in this moment? You don't have to be a hero, but you can become a quiet warrior. You can whisper to yourself, even on your hardest days, I don't know how this ends, but I will not lose faith in the story. Not just the story outside you, but the story you're writing within you. Because emotional mastery isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about remembering that your thoughts are yours. Your response is yours, and your power, no matter the circumstance, is always there, waiting to be claimed. The quiet power of inner victory. Before we end, I want to leave you with a few quiet questions, not to answer out loud, but to carry with you, questions that aren't meant to add noise, but to clear it, to help you pause, breathe, and return home to yourself. So here's the first. How much of your energy today was spent trying to control things outside of you? Be honest. Was it the traffic, the news, someone's opinion? Was it the outcome of a project, or the way someone responded to your message? We do it without noticing, worrying, reacting, overthinking, trying to manage everything out there so we can finally feel calm in here. But that's the trap, because the more you try to control what isn't yours, the more you drift from what is. And that leads us to the second question. What is actually in your control right now? Your breath? Your next thought? The words you choose, the focus you give, the way you treat someone today? When you begin to reclaim those little things, you start to feel something shift. The world might still be loud. The future might still be uncertain. But inside, you begin to feel steady, clear, centered. And here's the truth. You don't need to conquer the world. You don't need to control every outcome, or have everyone understand you, or have every step of your plan go exactly right. You just need to conquer your mind, not all at once, but one choice at a time, one deep breath instead of a harsh reaction, one moment of stillness instead of spiraling thoughts, one decision to return to who you want to be, even when life pulls you away. That's real power, not in force, not in dominance, but in discipline, the quiet discipline of self-awareness, practiced daily. That's what the Stoics lived, and it's what you can live too. Not someday, not when life calms down, but now, today, right where you are, with whatever you're facing. So as we close this journey together, I invite you to take these lessons with you, not as pressure, but as presence. Remember, you are not your fears. You are not your mistakes. You are not what others expect you to be. You are a thinker, a creator, a soul with the ability to respond, to reset, to rebuild, again and again. And when it feels hard, because some days it will, just come back to the practice. Come back to the breath. Come back to the question, what's in my control right now? Start there, because over time this practice becomes your peace. It becomes your strength. It becomes the path that leads you home. If this message spoke to something in you, if it reminded you of what you already know deep down, then I invite you to stay close. Subscribe to this channel for more daily reminders to return to calm, clarity, and character. To live not just reactively, but intentionally. This isn't just a video. It's a quiet beginning, and I'm glad you're here.